Back here on NFL Live, Kevin Nagandi with you. Second overall pick, Jayden Daniels getting his share of reps. Looking sharp during Commanders' OTAs and Cliff Kingsbury's offense. First-year head coach Dan Quinn on the 2023 Heisman winner.
The situation work we've been working really hard on, and so some of the timing and mechanics are different from college in a 2-minute setting than it is in the NFL. And so to see every day him going through those mechanics at a 2-minute, so the other day of at the end of the half working down in a clock situation where it's still moving on a first down, and so like that type of urgency, and so seeing him being comfortable in that environment, I would say that's one example of many that shows the work that he's putting in.
Not a long track record of Washington playing rookie quarterbacks in season openers. The Commanders franchise has only done it 3 times since 1950, and RG3, the only one in this Super Bowl era. Lewis, and back here with the guys, you hear what Quinn was saying specifically with Daniels impressing in the 2-minute drill here. When you hear that, what kind of expectations do you have Daniels in this offense over the next 3 months when it comes to leading up to the season opener?
Look, it's hard not to get super excited, Kevin, about Jayden Daniels, and I think everyone knows how I feel about him and how he accepted the challenge at LSU, mastered it, became the Heisman Trophy winner. He's going to accept the challenge now of playing on a football team where 3/5 of the offensive line is going to be new. They have, one of the most dynamic wide receivers in the NFL in Terry McLaurin. Jahan Dotson is a playmaker in his own right. They draft Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State, who's a fantastic athlete at tight end, and they got Austin Eckler. So he's got some help and a developing offensive line. So those things have to kind of work around him. But as far as himself and what he is doing, look, you've seen some of the clips that the Commanders have put out there in terms of some of the throws that he has made already in OTAs, and it's spectacular. And I've had correspondence with people down there who have said, look, very rarely does the ball hit the ground. He puts the ball exactly in where it needs to be put. He can throw with touch. He can throw with velocity. He is a student of the game, and he is someone, I think most importantly, Kevin, that the players will gravitate towards already. They want to be around him. They want to be accountable to him. They want to do better for him. That's pretty damn cool. He is going to take that town by storm as everything else around him grows along with him. I have 100% confidence in that.
Well, listen, you heard Lewis talk about all those examples, and you heard Dan Quinn talk about how many examples of there are where situations were that Jayden Daniels impressed. And so this job is setting up for Jayden Daniels to win, to be the opening day starting quarterback, and they've made it that way too. They already had a lot of talent on the offensive side of the football, and if you look at the coaching staff that they put in place, at least 5 of the assistant coaches on the offensive side of the football have directly coached quarterbacks at some point in their past. They're all experienced in working with quarterbacks. They're all invested in making Jayden Daniels shine. He's got the ability to do it, and it's setting up for him to be able to show that on opening day to become the face of this franchise moving forward.
Boog, this is an LSU to LSU question. When we watched Jayden Daniels on film all last season, he can move. And that is something he's going to need when you look at this offensive line. What concerns do you have about the guys protecting him?
Well, there's always concerns, especially about this offensive line. But I think it's important to know that Jayden Daniels, his athletic ability will buy this offensive line some time. And another thing, Kev, his ability to get rid of the ball as quick as he did. Let's understand, he was the ultimate playmaker at LSU last year. I mean, he had to make plays up and down the field. He had to make plays in and out of the pocket, and all he did was do it over and over, time and time again. His poise in the pocket, because he wants to be a pocket passer, will allow him to get rid of the ball quick. His motion is compact. He delivers the ball accurately. But if and when this offensive line does break down, I think that's when we're going to see what some compare to the second coming of Lamar Jackson. Because let me tell you, Kev, he is electric when he gets out of the pocket. The only thing he has to learn is you can't take big hits.
Yeah.
Slide, get out of bounds. Sometimes he's too confident in that athletic ability.
Yeah, and he will have a reality check in the NFL on a Sunday, especially in the opener if he plays, and he doesn't do that slide. You bring up Lamar Jackson. Lamar's done a phenomenal job of protecting his body and fully aware of sliding at the right time. Adam, let's now go to the top stories here and some other things you're tracking. The Browns rewarding the head coach and the GM. Fill us in.
Yeah, Kevin, this is something the Browns have planned and worked on for quite some time. It's been in the works for months. They've extended both their general manager, Andrew Berry, and their head coach, Kevin Stefanski. And so a franchise that has been a model of instability in the past now is taking the wise step of keeping things intact, extending their head coach, extending their GM, and keeping them in place for years to come. Meanwhile, Nick Chubb spoke today for the first time since he suffered that gruesome knee injury on Monday Night Football. He said he does not have a timeline on when to return to practice. He is running, though. That is encouraging. And the fact that he's reworked his contract and wants to come back, I think, is a big victory for that particular franchise right now. And then, lastly, Hassan Riddick, the defensive end edge rusher that the Jets traded for this offseason, has not shown up, skipping voluntary OTAs, wants that new contract. And that was really part of the reason here that the Eagles traded a player who was so good and so productive because they couldn't afford to pay him. They passed that off to the Jets. The Jets get the great player, but they know they have to do something. Nothing's been done yet. And so Hassan Riddick so far is a no-show with his new team.
Yeah, keep in mind, Riddick, 50.5 sacks over the last 4 years. No one has more in the NFC, now making his new life there in the AFC if a deal gets done. Let's stay here specifically with the Eagles conversation and that defensive line. New on NFL Live, Brandon Graham, one of the leaders in the locker room, had this to say on the Eagles' struggles last season.
I really think that last year we just didn't. We that's what we didn't have. We didn't have all the right coaches in the right position. You know, I would say. You just noticed little stuff last year on certain stuff you wasn't on the same page about. Just here and there, it will pop up, but it popped up in a big way that last game, and it's just like anything I learned, you always want to make sure that we just had a proper communication. So there's a real big communication going on right now.
BG saying a lot there. Lewis, they brought in new coordinators on both sides. Does the new DC, Vic Fangio, really cure the Eagles' defensive issues this upcoming season?
Well, let's just put it this way. There will be no miscommunication. Okay, it's one voice on the defensive side. You're not going to have him be replaced mid-season and have someone else kind of come in there and then really try and tweak what the other guy was doing while you demoted the other guy and put him up in the booth. There's going to be none of that. And see, you know what, Kev, this is one of the things. These are like the hidden issues that exist in football overall, whether you're talking about the NFL, college, or even high school, that really does contribute to winning and losing in a way that I don't know if fans really always, give enough respect to, or rather give enough credence to. When you're not on the same page, especially on defense, especially in a league where now you have guys that can just absolutely rip you for 90 because you had some kind of miscommunication issue, you have to have people on the same page. You have to have a coach, because we say all the time on the defensive side, and Boog knows this, if we're wrong, we all got to be wrong and all be wrong at the same time. When people are doing different things, like obviously was the case last year, you have no shot.
And we can talk about miscommunication. Sometimes also, Lewis, what players do is they use we just lined up wrong. We all didn't play the right defense. There was miscommunication. No, here's what happened. The Eagles weren't as good last year. The defensive line didn't dominate the way they did the year before. Some players didn't live up to the billing that they should have. They didn't play as well. And so we can blame it on miscommunication to keep our eyes off the physical aspect of it. But physically, technically, skill-wise, their defense wasn't as good. Howie Roseman has never paid attention from a standpoint of the second level, which is the linebacker position. Their linebackers weren't as good. And so now you bring in Vic Fangio, Vic is going to have a really good defensive scheme. He's going to make sure everybody's lined up where they go. But at some point, the players on the field in that front seven, particularly that defensive line, those guys have got to show up and play. Jordan Davis, can you get in shape? Jalen Carter, can you be in shape? Those guys have got to dominate. And quite frankly, last year they didn't. So we can change the coordinator. We can change the communication. We can all be on the same page, the wrong page. It doesn't matter. If your team is built for your defensive line to dominate and they don't, your defense is not going to be good. Ask the 49ers, you ask Indianapolis, you ask any team that's built their defense from back to front, inside out. Those guys up front have got to dominate. Kevin, I'll be honest with you. Your Eagles were very soft at the point of attack, and they didn't get after the passer last year, buddy.
I got nothing.
Well,
you
put it this way, but but when you stack on, look, I agree with you. I mean, they're going to be better personnel-wise this year. But when you stack on the kind of dysfunction that was running through that side of the ball in that room, in the defensive meeting room last year, I mean, you absolutely have no shot.
Yep.
It's hard enough to, it's like the good old saying, you can't win in the NFL in spite of. You have to try. You have to win because they were just trying to win in spite of all that mess going on.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
And many of the players at a certain point didn't want to be there. And you could see it, especially in prime time in that postseason game against the Bucs. And the defensive side, they were on their way to Cancun. Shefty, you got something to add here to this conversation?
Well, the funny thing is, it's starting this season with Vic Fangio, and the reason that much of that happened last season was because of Vic Fangio, even though he wasn't there, because at the end of the year, the Super Bowl run ran so late, they lose Jonathan Gannon. They wanted to keep Vic Fangio, but he didn't know whether the job was going to be open. He took the job in Miami as the Dolphins defensive coordinator. They got a late start on hiring a defensive coordinator. We all know how that worked out. And so this offseason, lo and behold, they go back to where they should have been last year and bring in the guy who would have helped the defense last year to restore order this year.
Yeah, Fangio coming full circle to a Philly guy that grew up watching Phillies games, now coaching the Eagles. And to Boog's point, they invested heavily on that defensive